The heel came down hard enough to crack bone before anyone understood why she was screaming. Blood hit the marble floor of Westfield Luxury Mall like a period at the end of a sentence no one asked to read. The woman didn't fall. She absorbed the blow, her body folding inward like she'd done this before. The man standing over her didn't look angry. He looked entitled. Like she was something he'd already thrown away once and found cluttering his path again. Shoppers froze mid-step. A Chanel bag slipped from someone's hand. Phones lifted in unison, recording, always recording. But no one moved to help. Security stood 20 feet away, radios buzzing, eyes darting between the woman on the floor and the man in the $1,000 shoes. He leaned down, close enough that his words were meant only for her, but the acoustics of wealth and glass carried them anyway. You really thought you could show your face here? After everything? You're nothing. You were always nothing. She didn't beg. Didn't cry. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her breathing controlled, deliberate. Her clothes were simple, faded. Her hands were rough, like she'd spent years holding things too heavy for her frame. But her eyes weren't broken. They were waiting. Hi, welcome to Love in the Shadow Stories. Thanks for watching. Kindly tell me what country you're watching from. A woman in the crowd whispered loud enough to be heard. She probably deserved it. You don't get treated like that unless you did something. Someone else laughed. Not loud. Just enough. The man straightened, adjusting his cuffs. He turned to the audience like a performer taking a bow. This is what happens when people forget their place. She thought she could leave me and survive. Look at her now. Blood pooled slowly, creeping toward the edge of a display mirror. A child started crying. The mother covered the kid's eyes but didn't leave. No one left. Violence in public always has an audience. Then something shifted. The woman's hand tightened around her phone. Not shaking. Not frantic. Steady. Like she was checking the time. Her thumb moved once, deliberate, and then she placed it face down on the floor beside her. She didn't call for help. Didn't scream. Didn't beg him to stop. She just whispered, voice low and cold enough to cut glass. You really shouldn't have touched me here. The man blinked, confused. The crowd murmured. What did that mean? Then a security guard's radio crackled. A voice came through, sharp and official. The guard's face drained of color. He looked at the woman on the floor, then at his supervisor, then back at her like he'd just recognized someone from a photo he wasn't supposed to see. His hand hovered over his radio. He didn't press it. The woman closed her eyes and exhaled slowly, like someone who'd been holding their breath for years and finally remembered how to let go. The man's confidence flickered. Just for a second. And somewhere far away a phone began to ring. Everyone agreed on one thing. She had nothing left to lose. The crowd filled in her story without asking. Poor. Abandoned. Used up and thrown away like trash someone forgot to take out. A woman near the Gucci store whispered to her friend, I think she used to date him. Years ago. Before he made his money. Another voice chimed in, she probably tried to trap him. They always do. The narrative hardened fast. It always does when someone's already on the ground. The man paced now, energized by the audience. He wasn't done. You want to know what's sad? I gave her everything. A roof. Food. A chance at a real life. And she threw it away because she thought she was too good for me. He laughed, sharp and bitter. Look where that got you. She didn't respond. Just sat there, blood still dripping from her split lip, staining the collar of her worn jacket. Her breathing stayed even. Too even. Like someone counting seconds in their head. A mall manager arrived, clipboard in hand, confidence oozing from every step. He didn't even look at her injuries. He looked at the crowd, at the phones, at the bad optics. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave the premises. You're causing a disturbance. She tilted her head slightly. If I leave now, this becomes much bigger. The manager blinked. Excuse me? I said what I said. Someone in the crowd laughed nervously. The man who kicked her stepped closer, his voice rising. You hear that? She's threatening people now. This is what happens when you let someone like her think she matters. He turned back to the manager. Get her out of here before I call the real police. But something was off. Her phone wasn't cracked. Most people who lived the life she was supposed to have lived, they had shattered screens, taped corners, phones held together by hope. Hers was clean. No. The case looked expensive, minimal, custom. Her hands didn't shake. Her fingers were steady when she brushed a strand of hair from her face, leaving a smear of blood on her temple. She scanned the exits like someone trained to measure rooms, to count security, to notice which cameras were active. A bystander zoomed in with their phone, catching the moment her eyes flicked toward the ceiling. Why is she so calm? They muttered. The man crouched in front of her, his voice low and venomous. No one's coming for you. You disappeared and no one cared. Not your family. Not your friends. No one even asked where you went. That word, disappeared, hung in the air longer than it should have. She met his eyes for the first time. You're right. I disappeared. He smirked. Finally, some honesty. But not the way you think. His smirk faltered. Her phone buzzed once. Face down on the floor, the vibration was loud enough for people nearby to hear. Once. Twice. 3 times. Not a call. A countdown. She didn't reach for it. The security guard from earlier returned, moving faster now, radio pressed to his ear. His supervisor was with him and the supervisor looked pale. Shaken. He whispered something that made the guard's eyes go wide. The supervisor approached her carefully. Respectfully. Ma'am, are you hurt? The room felt that word land like a bomb. The man who kicked her froze. What? The supervisor ignored him completely. Ma'am, we need to verify your status. Can you confirm your identity? She smiled. Small. Set. You already know who I am. And that's when the footsteps started. Slow. Synchronized. Deliberate. Not running. Not panicked. Coming. The alert didn't come from the police. It came from a private line no one else in the building had. The security supervisor stepped aside, hand trembling as he pressed the phone to his ear. His posture changed instantly. Spine straightened. Shoulders pulled back. His eyes darted to her, then away like he'd just looked directly at the sun. He spoke quickly, voice low. Yes, sir. Confirmed. Yes, she's here. No, I didn't know. I swear I didn't. The call ended abruptly. He stood there for a moment, staring at nothing before walking back toward the scene. His legs looked unsteady. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through tall grass. Who is she? Why is he acting like that? Did you see his face? The man who kicked her noticed the shift. His jaw tightened. He raised his voice, louder now, trying to reclaim control of the room. I don't care who you called or what kind of game you're playing. You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing. She finally spoke again, her voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the noise. You should stop now. Not a threat. A courtesy. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Or what? You'll call your imaginary boyfriend? Your fake lawyer? Please. The supervisor returned, walking carefully, like someone approaching a wild animal they didn't want to startle. He stopped a few feet away and cleared his throat. Ma'am, are you injured? Do you need medical attention? That word again. Ma'am. Not miss. Not lady. Ma'am. Respectful. Cautious. Afraid. Phones tilted higher. The energy in the room changed. People who were laughing moments ago now leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. Just not the blood they expected. Her phone lit up on the floor beside her. A message preview flashed briefly across the screen. Not a name. A symbol. A crest. Black and gold. Intricate. Official. Something that didn't belong on a civilian phone. She didn't pick it up. Didn't even glance at it. She just kept her eyes on the man who hurt her. He scoffed, pointing at the phone. What is that, some kind of prop? You think anyone's scared of a picture? He turned to the crowd, arms spread wide like a preacher. She's desperate. This is what desperation looks like. Don't fall for it. But the supervisor wasn't listening to him anymore. He leaned down slightly, voice barely above a whisper, but someone caught it on video. She's listed as protected. The words hit the air like a stone dropped into still water. Protected. By whom? No one said. The man's confidence cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but visible. Protected by who? What are you talking about? The supervisor didn't answer. He stepped back, hand on his radio, waiting for instructions that clearly weren't coming from mall management. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Oh my God. She's connected." Another voice, quieter, "Connected to what?" No one answered. The woman closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. Not relief yet. Just preparation. Like someone about to walk into a storm they'd been expecting for a long time. Then the sound came. Footsteps. Not frantic. Not rushed. Measured. Controlled. Multiple sets, moving in perfect rhythm. The kind of footsteps that didn't belong in a shopping mall. The kind that made people instinctively move aside before they even saw who was coming. The man's face went pale. Who the hell did you call? She opened her eyes and looked at him with something that wasn't anger. It was pity. I didn't call anyone, she said softly. He always knows. When the room went silent, it wasn't fear, it was recognition. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. The crowd shifted without being told to, bodies instinctively creating a path. Security guards straightened their posture. Someone pocketed their phone mid-recording. A woman grabbed her child's hand and stepped back 3 full paces. No one had seen him yet. But they felt him. The man who kicked her finally looked nervous. His eyes darted toward the exits, calculating distance, weighing options. I don't know what kind of stunt this is, but I'm not scared of some. Don't. The supervisor cut him off, voice tight. Don't say another word. Who's coming? Tell me who's. You don't ask that. The supervisor's hand trembled on his radio. You don't ever ask that. The woman on the floor closed her eyes. Her shoulders dropped, tension draining from her body like water from a broken dam. It wasn't fear leaving. It was something else. Relief. Bone-deep, aching relief. The kind you only feel when you've been holding yourself together for so long you forgot what it felt like to let go. A woman near the perfume counter whispered to her friend, she didn't vanish. She was removed. What's the difference? Hidden. Protected. Rebuilt. Another voice, barely audible, wait, is she married? Someone corrected them immediately, urgency in their tone. Not just married. Bound. That word carried weight. The kind of weight that made people nervous to even say it out loud. Then a phone rang. Not hers. The supervisor's. He answered, hands shaking, and before he could speak, a voice came through, calm, male, controlled. He put it on speaker by accident, his fingers slipping. 3 words filled the space. Is she bleeding? Every authority figure in that mall froze. The manager. The guards. The supervisor. Even the man who kicked her went completely still. No shouting. No threats. Just consequence encoded in tone. The supervisor stammered. Why, yes, sir. Minor injuries. We've secured the area. We're waiting for. I'm 30 seconds away. The line went dead. 30 seconds. The crowd started to move. Not running. Just repositioning. Creating space. Putting distance between themselves and the man who'd caused this. Someone muttered, I wasn't even here. I didn't see anything. The man's voice cracked. This is insane. I don't care who her husband is. I have rights. I have lawyers. I have. No one was listening anymore. His social power, the confidence he wore like armor, collapsed in real time. He was speaking to a room that had already erased him. The woman opened her eyes and looked at him one last time. Not with hate. Not with triumph. Just distance. Like he was already gone. The doors at the far end of the mall opened. Not with force. Not with drama. Just opened. And everything else in that space lowered its voice. The air pressure changed. The lighting felt different. People stopped breathing as loudly. He stepped inside. Tall. Calm. Dressed in black, tailored perfectly, moving like someone who'd never had to rush for anything in his life. His face was unreadable. His eyes swept the scene once, took in the blood, the crowd, the man standing over his wife, and then he walked straight to her. He didn't acknowledge anyone else. He knelt beside her. Checked her face. Her hands. The blood on her lip. His fingers were gentle, reverent, like she was made of something too precious to exist in a place like this. He spoke to her in a language no one else understood. Soft. Private. A question. She nodded. He exhaled, relief and rage mixing behind his eyes. Then he stood. And the man who kicked her finally understood what terror felt like. Power doesn't arrive loudly, it arrives and everything else lowers its voice. He didn't look at the man first. Didn't acknowledge the crowd, the phones, the blood on the marble floor. He went straight to her. Knelt down. Brushed her hair back from her face with fingers that trembled just enough to show he was human. His jaw was tight, but his touch was soft. Reverent. He whispered something only she could hear. Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. Actually smiled. The first real expression she'd shown since this started. Then he stood. The air changed. People who had laughed minutes ago now studied their shoes. A security lead swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing. Someone's phone slipped from their hand and clattered against the floor. No one bent to pick it up. The man who kicked her tried to speak. Look, I don't know who you think you are, but this is between me and... One finger raised. That's all it took. Silence. Instant. Absolute. The husband's voice was quiet. Calm. Almost polite. What's your name? The man hesitated. Why does that? Your name. Something in that repetition made the man's throat close up. He stammered it out. First and last. The husband nodded slowly like he was filing it away. Then he pulled out his phone. Didn't unlock it. Just held it. Do you know who I am? The man tried to bluff. Should I? A woman in the crowd made a sound. Not quite a gasp. More like a prayer for someone already dead. The husband didn't answer the question. He asked another. Do you have family that depends on you? What? That's none of your business partners? Investors? People who trust you with their money? The man's face went from pale to gray. You can't. I'm not threatening you. His tone was almost kind. I'm asking if you've thought about them. Because after today, they'll have to think about you very differently. A phone was handed to him by someone who'd appeared from nowhere, tall, silent, dressed in a suit that cost more than most people's cars. The husband opened a file. Turned the screen toward the man. The man looked. His knees almost gave out. Bank statements. Property records. Investment portfolios. Text messages. Photos. A life mapped out in ruthless detail. This was compiled 3 months ago, the husband said. When you started showing up near her work. When you started following her. He turned the phone back, scrolled slowly. You thought no one noticed. The man's voice broke. I wasn't. You were. The husband's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. And we documented everything. The mall manager, who'd been silent this whole time, stepped forward carefully. Sir, perhaps we could handle this more privately. The husband glanced at him. Just a glance. The manager stopped talking and took 2 steps back. He turned back to the man, his voice soft, almost gentle. You put your hands on her. In public. Where people could see. Where she could be humiliated. He paused. Do you know what that tells me? The man said nothing. It tells me you thought you were untouchable. That no one would come. That she belonged to no one. He stepped closer. Still calm. Still controlled. You were wrong about all 3. The supervisor's radio crackled. A voice came through. Legal team is in position. Accounts flagged. We're ready on your word. The husband didn't respond to the radio. He spoke directly to the man, his tone almost sympathetic. You touched what was never available to you. A phone buzzed in the man's pocket. Then another. Then another. Alerts. Messages. Calls coming in, one after another, vibrating against his leg like a swarm of insects. He pulled it out with shaking hands. The screen lit up with notifications. Email after email. All with the same subject line. Partnership terminated. Account under review. Access revoked. His face crumbled. The husband turned back to his wife. Crouched beside her again. This will be over soon. I promise. She reached up and touched his face. I know. He kissed her forehead, lingering there for a moment, then stood and walked toward the exit. He didn't need to say anything else. The room understood. The consequences had already started before anyone realized a decision had been made. Phones vibrated across the room. Not just his. Other people's. Bystanders who'd laughed, filmed, whispered cruel things into the void. Their screens lit up with messages from banks, employers, social media platforms. Notifications they didn't understand yet but would soon. The man's phone wouldn't stop. He stared at it like it was a bomb counting down. No. No, this isn't. He tried calling someone. The line went straight to voicemail. He tried another. Same thing. His hands shook so badly he almost dropped the phone. Access denied. Membership revoked. Investment withdrawn. Meeting canceled. Each alert was a door closing. Quietly. Permanently. A legal liaison appeared from somewhere in the crowd, dressed in a gray suit, face blank and professional. Then another. They moved like surgeons, efficient and emotionless. One of them approached the man with a tablet. Sir, you'll need to sign this. Sign what? I'm not signing anything. You can't. It's a non-disclosure agreement. You can sign it now or we proceed publicly. The man's voice cracked. Proceed with what? I didn't do anything illegal. The liaison didn't blink. That's not the standard we're using. Another liaison stepped forward, voice neutral. Your compliance is noted. Your access to the following entities has been suspended pending review. She listed them off like a grocery list. Investment firms. Country clubs. Nonprofits. Buildings he had keys to. People he thought were friends. The man looked around the room, desperate now. This is insane. Someone call the real police. This is harassment. No one moved. Because everyone in that mall understood something he didn't. This wasn't revenge. This was correction. The woman sat on a bench now, a coat draped carefully over her shoulders by someone who appeared just to do that and then vanished. A medic knelt beside her, cleaning the blood from her lip with hands that moved gently, respectfully. She never asked for help. It simply happened. Her husband stood nearby, hands in his pockets, watching everything unfold with the calm of someone who'd already decided how this ended weeks ago. He wasn't angry. Anger was loud. Messy. This was something else. This was inevitability. The man tried one more time. I have lawyers. I have rights. You can't just. The husband finally looked at him. You were investigated 3 months ago. The man froze. When you started showing up at her job. When you followed her to the grocery store. When you sent messages from accounts you thought were anonymous. The husband's voice was soft. Almost kind. We knew. We've always known. The man's face went white. You've been watching me? Protecting her. Pause. There's a difference. The liaison handed the man another tablet. Your assets are currently under audit. Pending findings, some may be frozen. This is standard procedure. Standard? There's nothing standard about this. For you perhaps. The liaison's tone didn't change. For us it's Tuesday. Another phone buzzed. This time it was the mall manager's. He glanced at it and his face drained of color. He looked at the woman, then at her husband, then walked quickly toward the exit without saying a word. The man collapsed onto a bench, head in his hands. Please. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Just stop. Please. The husband glanced at his wife. She looked back, searching his face. He knelt beside her again, voice low. Do you want this to stop? She thought about it. Really thought about it. The years of fear. The nights she couldn't sleep. The way she'd learned to make herself invisible just to survive. She shook her head. He nodded. Looked at the liaison. Continue. The man was escorted toward the exit, not by force, but by the sheer weight of people who stopped acknowledging his presence. He wasn't arrested. Wasn't dragged. He just disappeared into irrelevance. The room exhaled. The woman closed her eyes and let herself breathe. He didn't punish them, he erased their future. The man was gone, but the consequences kept unfolding like dominoes falling in slow motion. Reports came in quietly, delivered by people in tailored suits who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Each update was calm, factual, stripped of emotion. Partnership with Chin Industries dissolved. Board seat rescinded. Country club membership revoked. Charity gala invitation withdrawn. Each development landed without fanfare. No celebration. No gloating. Just the steady rhythm of a system moving because it had been told to move. The woman sat on the bench, coat still wrapped around her shoulders, listening but not reacting. This wasn't what she wanted. Not really. She never asked for revenge. She just wanted to be safe. To stop looking over her shoulder. To stop flinching when someone walked too close behind her on the street. Her husband knelt beside her, reading her face the way someone reads a language only they understand. You don't have to watch this, he said softly. You can leave. Go home. Let me finish. She shook her head. I need to see it end. He understood. Nodded. Stayed close. A call came through on speakerphone, the voice on the other end professional and brisk. Final confirmation. All remaining partnerships terminated. Assets frozen pending legal review. Reputation, unrecoverable. The husband thanked them and ended the call. No satisfaction in his voice. Just completion. The woman stared at the floor where her blood had been. Someone had cleaned it already. Mopped it away like it never happened. But she still saw it. Still felt the impact of his heel against her ribs. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. Her husband looked at her, confused. Regret what? Protecting me this way. Making enemies. Burning bridges. He smiled, sad and small. You think I had bridges before you? He reached for her hand, holding it gently. You didn't take anything from me. You gave me a reason to use what I had. Her eyes filled with tears. Not from pain this time. From something heavier. Gratitude. Guilt. Love. All of it tangled together. A final notification came through. The man who hurt her had been escorted out of the building, not by security, but by lawyers who spoke in calm tones about next steps, legal obligations and how quiet cooperation would benefit everyone involved. He wasn't arrested. Wasn't humiliated in front of cameras. That would have been too loud. Too public. This was surgical. His life simply stopped working. Doors that used to open stayed closed. Calls that used to be returned went to voicemail. Invitations disappeared. Opportunities dried up. By tomorrow people would forget his name. By next week they'd forget his face. That was the real punishment. Not pain. Irrelevance. The woman exhaled slowly, feeling something loosen in her chest. A knot she'd carried for years finally coming undone. Her husband watched her carefully. "Are you okay?" She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in a long time she nodded. "I think I will be." He kissed her forehead, lingering there, his hand cradling the back of her head like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "You're safe now," he whispered. And for the first time since this all started, she believed it. The mall returned to its normal noise. Shoppers moved again. Music played from overhead speakers. Life resumed, indifferent and relentless. But for her, something had shifted. The weight she'd been carrying, fear, shame, the constant need to stay small, lifted. She stood, her husband's hand still holding hers, and walked toward the exit. Not running. Not hiding. Walking freely. Like someone who finally remembered she had every right to take up space. Safety felt louder than fear ever had. The chaos drained from the space like water from a tub. The crowd dispersed, phones lowered, conversations resumed in hushed tones. Normal sounds returned, footsteps, music, the hum of air conditioning, but everything felt different now. Quieter. Heavier. Like the air itself had changed. She sat with him in a private lounge the mall manager had offered without being asked. Warm lighting. Soft chairs. Glass walls that let light in but kept the world out. A medic checked her injuries one more time, hands gentle, apologizing for every touch that made her wince. Her husband sat beside her, close enough that their knees touched. He watched the medic work with the intensity of someone making sure every detail was correct. When the medic finished and left, he reached for her hand again, thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She looked at him, confused. "For what?" "For how long you had to carry this alone." Her throat tightened. She'd spent years convincing herself she was fine. That being separated from him was for the best. That distance kept them both safe. But sitting here now, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers, she realized how heavy that loneliness had been. "I didn't want you to carry it at all," she whispered. "That's why I left." "I know." His voice cracked just slightly. "But you didn't have to be that strong." "Yes, I did." Her eyes filled with tears. "Because if I broke, if I called you, if I asked for help, he would have known. And then you'd be in danger too." He pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, letting herself be held for the first time in what felt like forever. His heartbeat was steady against her ear. Grounding. "Real. You were protecting me," he said softly. "I was protecting you. We were both alone together." She laughed, quiet and broken. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." "Yeah." He kissed the top of her head. "It is." They sat in silence for a while, just breathing. No words. No plans. Just two people remembering what it felt like to exist in the same space without fear. Outside, the systems he'd set in motion continued to move. Lawyers filed paperwork. Accounts were frozen. Networks quietly distanced themselves. But in here none of that mattered. She finally spoke, voice small. "Is it really over?" He didn't lie to her. He never had. "For you, yes." She caught the distinction. "But not for you. I'll make sure it stays over." His tone was certain. Final. "He won't come near you again. No one will." She pulled back slightly to look at him. His face was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of decisions already made. Promises already set in stone. "I don't want you to become something dark because of me," she said. He smiled, sad but honest. "I'm not becoming anything I wasn't already. I'm just finally using it for something that matters." She reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. He leaned into her touch like a man starving for it. "I missed you," she whispered. "I never stopped looking for ways to keep you safe." His voice broke. "Even when I couldn't be near you." She kissed him then. Soft, slow. Not passion but reunion. The kind of kiss that says I'm here and so are you and that's enough. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now?" He smiled. "Now we go home." She closed her eyes and let herself believe it. Home. Not hiding. Not running. Just home. By morning everyone knew, but no one said his name. News spread the way it always does when power moves in the dark. No headlines. No official statements. Just whispers that traveled through text messages, private calls, closed-door meetings. People rewrote their memories to stay safe, erasing themselves from the story before the story could erase them. I wasn't even there. I didn't see anything. I always knew something was off about him. The man who kicked her ceased to exist in any meaningful way. His social media went dark. His business phone disconnected. The building where his office used to be suddenly had a new tenant. People who'd called him friend last week now struggled to remember his face. But something else emerged in the silence. A foundation was announced quietly, buried in the back pages of industry newsletters. Its mission was simple: protection, restoration, and silence for those who needed it. Women who'd been erased, dismissed, hurt by people who thought they were untouchable. Her name was listed not as a victim, but as a director. The calls started coming in within hours. Some sincere, women who'd lived through similar nightmares, asking if the foundation was real, if help was actually available. Others strategic, people trying to align themselves with power they didn't understand but desperately wanted access to. She ignored most of them. Answered a few. The ones that felt real. One message stood out. It was from a woman who'd been in the mall that day. Who'd laughed when she was on the ground. Who'd whispered cruel assumptions into her friend's ear. The message was short: "I'm sorry. I should have helped." She stared at it for a long time before deleting it without responding. Some apologies came too late to matter. Her husband found her on the balcony of their home, staring out at the city lights. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and stood beside her in silence. "They're calling," she said after a while. "Women who need help. Are you ready for that?" She thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't know if I'll ever be ready, but I know what it feels like to be alone. To think no one's coming." She looked at him. "If I can change that for even one person." He nodded, understanding without her needing to finish. "You won't be doing it alone." "I know." The foundation grew quietly over the following weeks. No press releases. No celebrity endorsements. Just results. Women disappeared from dangerous situations and reappeared somewhere safe. Legal cases that had stalled for years suddenly moved forward. Evidence that had been lost mysteriously resurfaced. Power was no longer something she feared. It was something she wielded. Carefully. Purposefully. Not for revenge but for protection. The man who hurt her became a case study. A warning. People in certain circles whispered his story as a cautionary tale. Don't touch what you don't understand. Don't assume silence means weakness. And never, ever underestimate someone just because they look like they have nothing left to lose. She walked into a building one Tuesday afternoon, clean, modern, filled with light. A space built specifically for the foundation. For women who needed somewhere to land when the world tried to push them off the edge. A young woman sat in the waiting area, nervous, clutching a bag like it held everything she owned. She looked up when the door opened, eyes wide and scared. She smiled at her. "Warm. Real. You're safe here." The young woman's shoulders dropped. Tears spilled over. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me." She sat down beside her. "You just have to let us help." Outside the city kept moving. But inside that room something shifted. Another life pulled back from the edge. Another person reminded that they mattered. Her husband appeared in the doorway, watching silently. She glanced at him and he nodded, pride and love written all over his face. This was the legacy. Not dominance. Not fear. Just the quiet, steady work of making sure no one else had to survive alone the way she once did. The story everyone thought was about revenge was actually about permission to live. 6 months passed like water finding its level, slowly, naturally, without force. The foundation grew roots. Women arrived broken and left whole. Not fixed. Not saved. Just given the space and resources to rebuild themselves on their own terms. She stood in front of a mirror one morning, studying her reflection. The bruises were long gone. The split lip healed. But the change went deeper than skin. Her eyes looked different now. Clear. Unburdened. She used to make herself small. Shrink into corners. Apologize for taking up space. Now she walked into rooms and owned them. Not with arrogance. With quiet certainty. Her husband found her there, wrapping his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "How easily people misjudge silence," she said softly. "They see someone quiet and assume they're weak. They see someone patient and think they're powerless." He smiled against her hair. "And then they find out. And then they find out." The man who hurt her was never mentioned again. Not by name. Not by anyone who valued their position in the world. He existed somewhere, she supposed, but not in any way that mattered. The story of what happened to him spread through whispers, rumors, cautionary tales told in private. No one knew the full truth. That was intentional. Mystery became part of the protection. The less people understood about how the system worked, the more they feared crossing it. She didn't enjoy that fear. But she respected its usefulness. The foundation never made headlines. It didn't need to. The women it helped knew. The people who needed to know knew. That was enough. One afternoon she walked through the same mall where everything changed. The floors still gleamed. The stores still glowed. Music still played overhead. But this time she wasn't looking over her shoulder. Wasn't measuring exits. Wasn't bracing for impact. She was just walking. A mother with 2 children passed by, laughing about something. A couple held hands near the fountain. An older man sat on a bench, reading a newspaper and eating a pretzel. Normal life. Unremarkable. Beautiful in its ordinariness. No one recognized her. No one stared. She was invisible in the best possible way, not erased but free. She stopped near the spot where it happened. The floor showed no trace of blood. No evidence of violence. The world had moved on the way it always does. But she remembered. And that memory wasn't a wound anymore. It was proof. Proof that she survived. Proof that silence wasn't weakness. Proof that power didn't have to announce itself to be real. Her phone buzzed. A message from her husband, "Dinner at 7?" She smiled and typed back, "I'll be there." She slipped the phone into her pocket and kept walking, past the stores, past the crowds, past the place where someone once tried to make her feel like nothing. She walked freely. Unbothered. Unafraid. Because some people think power announces itself with noise, with spectacle, with force. But the real kind? The real kind simply decides. And then it moves. And nothing stands in its way. If this story touched you, hit that like button and subscribe to Love in the Shadows Stories for more powerful narratives. Drop a comment below. Have you ever witnessed someone underestimate the wrong person? What happened? Share your story. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.